that everyone was able to find me here. It has been quite the morning. I also apologize for the giant disaster area behind me. We're currently packing to go back to LA on Monday, so hence the mess you see. So we have a pretty short Q&A today. I'm gonna get to everybody's questions, and hopefully I can help you guys with your stretching questions. Let's see who's first. First we have Grace Davis. I'm glad that you enjoy the DVDs, Grace. It means a lot to me. I really hope everyone finds them helpful. Bridges, your bridge looks really good. I know you're working on getting your heels and fingertips to touch and hopefully grab ankles eventually. Yeah, catch ankles is a fun one. Any tips for this, and that you're having a hard time keeping your heels on the floor and feet facing forward? At what point is it good to start working on catching ankles? Well, I mean, the short answer is when you can. It's definitely considered a more advanced move. Oh, someone would like to say hi. Right. Quick interruption for cuteness. Catch ankles is definitely considered an advanced move. I remember training with a contortion coach once who said that you can call yourself a contortionist when you do catch ankles with your legs completely straight and sit in pretzel with your feet flat on the floor for 60 seconds. So that kind of gives you an indication that it is considered a pretty advanced move. So go slow with it, just know that it's something you have to work up towards. If what you're really struggling with is feeling like your heels want to come up off the floor and your feet want to turn out, that's a good indication that's part of what's blocking you are your hips and your hip flexors. And actually, for many of those movements where you want to have the leg and extend it, the shoulders and the hips tend to be the parts that that you need to work on the most. So if you're feeling the hips a lot in this, I would say really work on stretching your hips and trying to stretch them in square, because that tendency for the legs to turn out and the heels to come up happens when the internal parts of the hip flexors are really tight, like the psoas, those deep connectors. So really working on a lot of lunges is good. And then you can start working on doing lunges where you lean backwards in the lunge. So you're starting to get the back and the hips working together. Is on the couch, so I got to jump in. So for instance, you can do a lunge where your back shin is up against the wall and you lean over backwards and try to touch your head to your foot or try to catch your foot. And those can be really helpful in starting to open up those hips. Just trying to see. If you lean over backwards, you can also work on really tucking your pelvis in that position. And this is something that can feel very strange at first. The tendency is to collapse into the lower back there. It's helpful. It's very helpful. But the more that you can get the pelvis to tuck under and lift up out of your pelvis, the easier it's going to be for you to get the hip to open, and it puts a lot less strain on the back in that position, which can be one of the problems when you start to get deep into those back bends. So that would be my recommendation, just in terms of short-term progress. As you start to get closer and closer to the feet and you start to be able to get your hands to your feet, start standing on your fingers. So you try to get your hands underneath your heels and then press down with your heels and work on straightening your arms and straightening your legs in that position. Message me again when you get a little closer, when you're at that position, and I'll start talking about actually getting your hands on your ankles. But those two should give you something to work on for a while. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, next person, we have Maddie Limes. You mentioned lunges in one of your videos and that the front leg getting in the way. Mine used to feel like that, but not so much now. Wanted to send you pics of my lunge both sides. Does it look like I'm bending my back too much? Actually, no, Maddie, they look really beautiful. Those look like great lunges. I would say, we can always go deeper. We can always work a little bit more, but your form looks really good. I think you're working from a really good base from what I can tell from the pictures. So what you might want to start working on next is maybe trying some different positions in the lunges. The leg that's back, you can reach that same arm up and reach out of that hook, little reach to the side and that sideways bend can start to open up some of the muscles through the side of the body and the hip. And you can also try putting the back shin up against the wall if that's not too hard on your knee. For some people, that's really hard on the knee. We're going to talk a little bit about knees towards the end of this broadcast. So just be very careful with that one. But if it feels okay, it can be nice for opening up your hip. But so far as I can see, your lunges look great. I've not figured out how to attach a picture to my YouTube broadcast. When I get back to LA, I'm going to get some technical help. But for those of you who can't see the pictures, it looks like her back is really nice and straight, and that's really what you're going for, is the hips even and not a lot of arch and sway in the lower back. So congratulations, whatever you're doing, it's working. Next question, Rose Lee. Working on cocoon and pull, and it needs work. I'm not sure if my back flexibility is an issue, hip, or even hamstring. My instructor kept telling me to relax my hips, but it was impossible. Any advice? Well, it could be all three of those things, back, hip, and hamstring. It's hard for me to say without reworking with you more and getting to know your body a little bit more, but generally all three of those things are going to be used for cocoon position. For those of you out there who aren't pole dancers, go ahead and Google cocoon pull. You know what we're talking about. Basically, you're hanging upside down, trying to reach back and grab your foot and pull it forward. There's a really good reason why your hips aren't relaxing. It's because you're hanging upside down and trying to grab your foot. And it's not a very relaxing position. So your hips are saying, no, we don't do that. That doesn't feel safe. So instead of thinking about relaxing the hip, you can think about opening the hip, or you can think about contracting the muscles on the outside of the hip, or rather the opposite side. So the downstairs butt, that muscle underneath your butt. Sometimes when that passive flexibility isn't working for you, so you're not able to, your muscles are feeling unsafe, hanging upside down in the air, and they're not able to relax and give you that range of motion easily, you can start to squeeze the opposite muscle, so the back of the leg and the hamstring of that leg that you're trying to catch, and use that to try to open up the hip. See if that helps a little bit. Also, I would say try to stretch in that position on the ground and see if your hips will relax a little bit more and open up a little bit more on the ground. Because if they can get used to doing that when you're not in a precarious upside down in the air position, then they will probably have an easier time doing that when you are upside down in the air, because they'll start to get to know that position and feel safer with it. It's also really important to stretch everything separately first and warm up really well before you do position. I assume that you're doing that in class. You're warming up really well. So that's definitely something to think about. Lastly, I would say work on your shoulders. I know that a lot of people have issues in this position with feeling that the shoulder rotation is very difficult for them, and just getting that leg in position. So work on not allowing the shoulders to come up and in, so you get this hunched grab. That's going to be really blocky in your upper back, and it's also really hard on your shoulders. Try to work on the shoulder rotation, where you're bringing the elbows in, the armpit facing forward, and that's going to enable you to reach back a little further with that arm, give you a little bit more range of motion to grab the leg behind you, and hopefully that will help. But from what I can see, you've got a good start to it. It doesn't seem worse. It doesn't look terrible. Just, keep on working little by little. It is a difficult position. And like I said, work on the same position on the ground as much as you can before doing it in the air. It's going to be a lot easier for your body to relax and really feel it when you don't have that added factor of the danger of being upside down in the air. All right. Moving along. Kat, an Aussie living in Dubai. So Kat is doing a lot of aerial. She was working contortion, but now that she's doing silks and rope, she feels that she's losing a lot of her flexibility, but she really wants to be able to do both. Absolutely, why not? So her question is specifically about this area in the front. So she sent me a lovely picture of her working on her chest stand against the wall. But the issue is having a lot of tightness and feeling that this won't expand. I'm not sure if that particular issue has always been there or if that's new since doing aerial. Um, I mean, it's very commonplace for people to get stuck in back bending, especially in pretzel, because there's so much opening that has to happen here to get the chin and both shoulders and the chest on the floor at the same time. This basically all has to be flat, and that's not something that we normally do in life. Um, we a lot of times also are going forward, or that against typing or driving, or talking on the phone or texting. So we're always going inward and forward. It's very closed, most of the motions that we do. So to open this up, it takes some time and some work sometimes. So there are two different issues. You said you think it might be myofascial, where actually the fascia of the body here is too short to get the full extension. Fascia is the stuff that holds our body together, the sacs in which our muscles and organs are held. And they can be the limiting factor to our flexibility sometimes if your fascia is tight, or I'm just adjusting to for the rest of the people in my household, a little privacy. So if that is what you're feeling, if it feels like the muscles aren't really stretching, but your body just won't go any further, then some myofascial release massage might be helpful. That you might have some stuff sort of attached to your sternum, going up through the neck. But most often it is at least partially muscular. We have these big, strong muscles coming down through here. Also, the pectoral muscles through here are strong, and the upper traps can sometimes block you if this is an issue, where these guys are really strong. A lot of aerialists get these upper traps get kind of yoked up here, and then you try to put your head back, and there's nowhere for it to go. So I have a couple of pieces of advice for aerialists who want to increase their neck flexibility. Oh my goodness, I have no idea what that noise was. My computer just made. I need to go away. It's my, I need to go away. That was wrong. So I'm so sorry, guys. All right, it is gone. Couple pieces of advice for aerialists with the tightness through the throat and chest. One is that the more precise you are with your technique when you're hanging from things in the air, the less restriction you're going to get through the front of the body. A lot of the problem is that when we're first learning aerial, we already have this inward rotation of the shoulders just from life, right? And then when you go to reach up in the air and you start to hang, that inward rotation of the shoulders here, you can feel it when you're in the air. So that means your armpits are facing out and your shoulders are rotating in. You've got this rotation. You start to pull your body up. I'm exaggerating. I don't think you're really doing it this badly, but I'm exaggerating for illustration. If your shoulders are up here and you're pulling yourself up, you can see I'm really using a lot of the muscles through here, through the front of my body, my pecs and the fronts of my shoulders. And these muscles aren't really meant to do that kind of heavy lifting. And so they tighten up and they get angry and they lose their flexibility. And this happens to a lot of people when they start doing aerial. And it happened to me as well. I was training contortion. I thought, I'd try a little hoop. And immediately all of this got really tight, and it was because my technique wasn't entirely correct. It also screwed up my shoulder because my shoulder was inwardly rotating as I was trying to hold my body up. So what I really recommend is working on feeling this rotation of the shoulder where you're bringing the shoulder outwards. That means bringing the outside of the armpit forward. And you can feel immediately as that rotation happens that the big muscles in the back start to fire. And this is what you want to try to feel. Now, it might be a little hard to feel at first if you are really already very bulked up in here and these muscles are your helper muscles and they're going to resist any efforts you're going to make to loosen them up and to get the back to engage. So bend the arm a little bit more if you have to. If you have access to exercise equipment, sometimes you can use a lat pull-down machine to simulate what it feels like to do a pull-up, or you can use a pull-up assist and you put on really light weight and start hanging up like this and move to the shoulder rotation position and up and rotate down and work on feeling the back muscles, and then start to bend the arms and simulate the push-up and see, or sorry, pull-up, and see if you can feel those back muscles work the entire time and all of this stay open. By the time that you're all the way up at the bar, you should still have this openness. You shouldn't see the shoulders coming up and forward, or the neck crunching down, or the chest lifting up towards the chin. This should all remain open. Ideally, it should just look like this. And not only is this going to help to relieve some of that tightness and tension that happens in the shoulders and the chest when you do a lot of aerial, so it looks prettier. And it's going to really help prevent shoulder problems in the long run to develop those back muscles, because the back muscles are huge. If you look at a diagram of the muscles in the back, the lats and lower traps are really big, strong muscles, and they have the ability to grow and develop to be able to support your body weight in the way that these guys are just not meant to do. There's big things. So that's one thing that will really help is really examining and perfecting your aerial technique. The other thing is to work on breathing, relaxing, and opening this whenever you're stretching. So I know you said that you're working on dropping your head back and opening this up, but feeling those, so if I talk and do that at the same time, if you drop your head back, and you don't have the support from your upper back, it's very difficult for these muscles to fully release. What you want to get is that full relaxation and opening through this area. So something has to be supporting you. What should be supporting you are the muscles in the upper back. So before you drop your head back, and I'm going to talk about this and then do it so I don't cough. Try rolling your shoulders back, sliding them down the back, and just a little bit lift the chest up, using the muscles underneath the shoulder blades. Feel those muscles underneath the shoulder blades and lifting and supporting your chest as it gets nice and broad. Then lengthen the chin towards the ceiling and drop the head back. So I'm going to show you the two different ways. So this is, I am relaxed in my back. You can see that my shoulders naturally are going to come a little forward. This is a little bit closed off. Also, when the shoulders come forward, I have my upper traps kind of coming up and in. So then if I drop my head back, you can see it's to a certain point and it just stops. And I can feel a stretch through here, and I can also feel that my head is just hitting my back. There's no place further for it to go. I do. Now, if I roll my shoulders back, I engage through the upper back and lift the chest. Now I can already feel this openness here. Now when I drop my head back without talking, you can see it goes a lot farther. And that's without any warm-up, just changing the position of my upper back and shoulders. That's going to open that up a lot more. So whenever you're doing your upper back, neck, shoulder stretches, really think about the fact that something has to be supporting your body. So if you want this to relax and open, you've got to engage through the upper back and really feel those muscles and allow this to all just sit and rest back on the strength and support of the upper back. Find that helpful. Oh, and in terms of going back into bridge and rolling into cobra, I would say don't do that yet. You should have a solid chest stand with your feet on the floor before working on that, or you can really put a lot of pressure on your neck, and you end up kind of rolling over your face, which is very uncomfortable. So work on your chest stand, one thing at a time. Work on the chest stand and wait to do the fancy roll until you can really go over backwards and get your chin on the floor and then roll. Because otherwise it can be very hard on your neck, if I understand correctly the movement that you're trying to do. Okay, moving swiftly along. Jirgana. Okay, Jirgana. Jirgana has been working on back bends and working on camel, which is when you kneel and go over backwards, and has had some, sounds like some pretty serious knee problems after one day of training. Now, I looked at your picture, Jirgana, and it looks like your back is starting to open up, but couple things about knees. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about knees in general, and then I'm going to talk specifically about the picture that you sent and what I think might be going on with you, although again, caveat, I am not a doctor, and I am not going to try to diagnose you from one photo on Facebook, so I'm going to talk pretty generally about this. So the knees are not the strongest, most stable joint. They're kind of a silly design, really, but nobody asked me about knee design, so um, knees they tend to be loose, and that's why knee problems are so common. Another problem is dog. Ooh, no, not right now. If your hips are very tight and your knees are loose and you're trying to stretch your hips, and this goes for many different kinds of hip stretches. It goes for butterfly, it goes for splits, it goes for back bends. If you're trying to open up your hips and your hips are just gripping and tight, it's very easy for that stretch to then go into the knees, and not in a way that's good for them. So you have to be very careful if you know you have tight hips and loose knees to strengthen your knees. And I've suggested some knee strengtheners throughout these videos, but it's very important to engage and strengthen your knees. And also, when you're stretching your hips, to be very aware of the fact that you're going to need to go slower so that you don't go so quickly or so far into a stretch, push so far into a stretch and push deep enough so that your hips are no longer actually stretching, it's your knees. So it's something that you have to be very, very conscious of. And there are certain positions that are going to be harder on knees than others. And I noticed that you were doing camel unsupported with your hands back over your head, which can be a wonderful back opener, but is also a pretty advanced stretch. And I see that the way that you're doing it, your thighs are straight up and down with your body going backward. And that is going to put a lot of pressure on your knees. Generally, what I recommend if people are starting to do this stretch is to keep the hands on the hips, or put the hands on the heels behind you as you're going over backwards. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of what I'm talking about here. So again, I'm so sorry about the mess. I'm just in the middle of packing. So you can see my body here. You can see that right now my thighs are straight up and down. So what happens if I start to lean back with my hands up over my head? A, I'm putting a lot of pressure on my lower back. But B, if I keep going and my hips are really tight, I'm going to start to hinge back a little bit. And all I have to do is hinge back just a quarter of an inch, and I'm already feeling it in my knees. I'm feeling a pulling in the kneecaps there because my hips aren't stretching. So that could definitely cause some of the knee problems that we're having right now. For right now, I'd recommend not doing this at all. And I think you should maybe take a break from everything until you see a doctor from what you're describing. I definitely wouldn't recommend pushing into it at all, but for the future, when you know what's going on with your knees and if you have them and they're not bothering you at all anymore and you want to start doing this again, don't bring your hands up so quickly. You really want to be very solid and sure of yourself in this position. Keep the hands here or reach back and grab the heel. So you've got a little support that way. And then also work on actually pushing your hips a little in front of your knees. You never want to be back here in the stretch. You want to stay in front of the knees. That's going to take the pressure off the knees and start to make you use your hips a little bit more. Then you also want to work on tucking your pelvis. You're not collapsing into your lower back, but that's a whole other conversation. So in the short term, Durgana, I would say, I know that you've been working really hard on this challenge and you've done a lot of wonderful work, but if you're having this kind of pain in your knees, I would say really take a break. No splits challenge is important enough that you should do damage to your body to complete it. Everyone would, I'm sure, understand. So I highly recommend that you see a doctor, because what you're talking about could be, you could have some kind of tear or something in there. So, you know, I don't want to diagnose you, but I also want to encourage you to take care of your body and to be really careful and to get some help with that. Um, so there's no problem with that. The splits will always be there for you when you're ready for them, and so will the rest of your community. So that would be my advice. Okay, and that's all we have for today. It's a nice short broadcast. So everybody have a wonderful Saturday, and more questions next week. We'll be back in LA, so hopefully have a little bit better setup there. But thank you so much. Take care. Keep bending. Unless you're broken, in which case stop bending as your doctor.